Hey everyone, welcome back. This is a perspective video based on test cluster content. Keep in mind that details may change in the future and that this is not necessarily representative of final release. This is the second video in the series looking at the new augments, today's being Grendel's Gourmand. This is not a powerhouse augment, but it's incredibly fun and allows a lot of interesting gameplay. That's how I feel about it. It's very cool and makes Grendel even more of an oddball frame to set him apart from the rest. So fun that you might actually consider picking him up for a spin. I never really like Grendel because everything depends on his one, but I feel what you can accomplish with Gourmand makes it worth it. So what exactly is this augment? Well, if you're familiar with older frame augments, this is literally Despoil for his one. You simply just consume health instead of energy when you have enemies stored in your belly. This makes it more useful for some synergy setups. Now, some of you may be thinking, this should be part of his base kit. I actually disagree. The conversion of energy drain to health drain is much less efficient. It's so high that unless you are late game, it may even be unmanageable, whereas the energy drain as one normally has is tolerable. But that's the thing, we don't have that many ways to regenerate energy consistently and on demand. While the health drain is drastically higher than the energy drain, even on a relative comparison, we do actually have ways to regenerate health consistently and on demand. And these ways are so good that they even eclipse the disproportional amount of health drain the augment causes. You do have to be careful though, because while you still vomit out all the enemies if you run out of health, just like energy, it won't kill you, but you are animation locked during this window. And being at 2 HP with an animation lock spells almost certain death. There's one undisputedly best Helminth for a Gourmand Grendel. There are many ways to health regen and even more Helminth options as well. But today, we're settling on Blood Altar. Why this one? Because this Helminth has by far the highest percent regen of any ability in the game. But be careful because it does not work the way you think. The health regen you see, it's based on HP percent missing. So if it says 25%, it will heal 25% of your missing HP per second, but heal ticks 4 times a second and constantly recalculates, meaning it takes quite a while to heal to full, and the vast majority of the effective heal is the first half of whatever HP you're currently missing. So if you can keep your HP above 50%, then that means you're nowhere near close to capping out the drain from Gourmand. But once it drops to a steady 25% HP as Gourmand drain fights the Blood Altar heal, you're probably close to capping out how much your Blood Altar can get back from the drain. It also puts you at risk of dying despite your sky high armor because of how much Grendel's HP will fluctuate. Now, about his one. Without the augment, it has a listed drain per enemy. This is how much drain you will get per enemy in your stomach beyond 2 enemies, with the first 2 only counting as a single drain value. So at base stats, 1 and 2 enemies both drain 1.5 per second, 3 enemies will drain 3 per second, 4 drains 4.5, 5 drains 6, etc. But what the game doesn't tell you is Feast has a hidden secret energy ramp cost as well. It's 0.05 more energy per second you still have enemies in Grendel's guts. This value though is mostly unnoticeable, as even after 100 seconds it only adds up to 5 more drain per second before even accounting for efficiency or duration. The cast costs, drain per enemy, and hidden ramping drain are all carried over to the health drain instead with Gourmand. Duration does matter, as like I said, the drain per enemy and ramping drain are channeled ability calculations which use both duration and, listen, uncapped efficiency. Now, what is uncapped efficiency? It is the value you reach with mods, and not the arsenal stat efficiency. You can equip 190 efficiency with fleeting and streamline, but it will only show 175. That 175 is used for cast costs, but the active drains, they will use 190. Ironically, the uncapped efficiency has a limit of 190. I tried slapping Boreal's Hatred on, even an unranked one, for 195 efficiency, and there was no drain difference. So Gourmand has a base conversion of 200 health on cast and 30 health drain. The cast cost is fine, but the drain is actually disproportionately high. It should have been around 12 HP or so per enemy if it preserved the same ratio as the energy drain. This might have been DE being aware of HP being much easier to recover than energy. Now, this is actually true, and it is easy enough. You can still easily heal way more than even this increased drain at the start, to the point that the non-Gourmand builds can only eat up to about 70 to 90 enemies, whereas Gourmand builds can get past the 130, nearly 150, with little difficulty. While Gourmand builds end up focusing on just eating the entire map, it's seriously incredibly fun, and you can even meme around with it. So let's take a look at the builds. I got two today, one for non-Gourmand as you're waiting for the update to drop, and one for Gourmand, depending on whether you have access to Helminth or not for all that feasting fun. This one is the non-Gourmand setup, a simple eat and yeet. You can easily eat past 50 enemies on this build instantly because of the 190 efficiency on the setup. Spectral Siphon, so you have a place to go back to when your energy is about to run out or you need to digest enemies. Just make sure you're inside the ring, and when the enemies pop out, all the ones that die have a 50% chance to drop an energy orb, leaving you with excess orbs on the floor, instantly triggering Arcane Energize, and also triggering Arcane Eruption to knock down anything within 30 meters. Arcane Eruption is actually extremely important here on the non-Gourmand setup, because running out of energy forcibly vomits enemies around you and stun locks you for a full second or so. If you don't have your shields up, this can get you killed. Popping enemies up while in your ring guarantees Eruption will proc to give you some CC and get past the stun lock alive. Strength is kept neutral since your goal is just to eat as many enemies as possible and eventually digest them all at once. The longer they stay in your stomach, the more armor they lose. You suck enemies up by tapping your 1. Mouth stays open for about 1.5 seconds at start. For every enemy sucked, it stays open for another 1 second. Holding 1 will vomit them back outward around you and an 8-meter cone forwards. They take toxin scaling damage based on levels of the enemies, so sitting in stomach long enough to strip armor will easily kill most of them when you vomit. Rolling Guard helps with shield gate, so you can just cast any of your first 3 abilities to fill it back up to full. We want some duration so your Spectral Siphon actually sticks around a bit, and you can actually get use out of it. Prime sure-footed for obvious reasons. Your 4 Meatball is there for funsies, but isn't that useful. We don't need our 3 because most kills will be from digesting and vomiting enemies with your 1 instead of forcibly ejecting them with your 3. 2 is very meh on the energy-based build. This one, you just go around eating stuff and casting Spectral Siphon as needed. Either forcibly vomit with your 1 when your energy runs low, or let it run out when you're inside a Spectral Siphon ring to get all of your energy back near instantly. Yes, this is mostly just a fun build, and you might be able to do something more with this kit, but this build is focused entirely around fun and eating the map. Anything you can see, you can eat. Let's look at the second build, as they both overall play quite similar. This is the Gourmand Grendel. Same eat and yeet. This is the one that can easily get you past 100 enemies with the right build. Just keep in mind on the test cluster right now, vomiting over 70 enemies at once can crash your game, and vomiting over 90 is a guaranteed crash. Hopefully they fix this before the final release. So what has changed? Well, obviously the Helminth is Blood Altar like we discussed earlier. Because the active drain is now HP, we no longer need Prime Flow, and also don't need Spectral Siphon to sustain our energy. But duration has become an important stat because we're relying on our Blood Altar to heal ourselves at all times. This means I don't want to run Fleeting Expertise, as it will significantly cut into how long our Blood Altars last. Typically in a setup with mandatory support abilities, my unwritten rule is that they must last longer than 30 seconds if they're required to stop you from dying. 155 duration lets us just barely do that with 31-second duration on the altars. The augment obviously goes in the open slots. If you're worried about the 14-meter heal radius being too small, you could swap Augur Reach for Overextended, pushing you to 235 range for 18.8-meter radius, but you drop to just 95 strength, which cuts your health regen per second of your altar from 45% to 30% with growing power active, or 1/3 of your healing power gone. It's up to you. The build really feels like it could have used a 9th mod slot, but it is functional. We're running double Umbral because strength is really appreciated for the heals on this build, as Blood Altar is a percent HP restore, not flat restore, so more strength equals more percent HP, which is huge. Because it is percent HP, increasing HP max is also important, hence why I slotted Umbral Vitality. Together, these two Umbral mods also benefit from their set of bonus. Prime sure-footed again for obvious reasons, and growing power for just a tad extra strength. If you don't feel like you need Rolling Guard, which is a very risky play, but okay on base steel path only, I would suggest putting overextended here for 265 range and 95 strength. It completely opens up the tile for movement freedom with a 21.2 meter radius blood altar. And you can even stack up to 3 of them, but you still have to be careful. Arcane Energize, cause why not, to feel your other abilities, and once again Eruption to knock everything down in case you bottom out your HP, and get stun locked in the vomit animation. If you want to go a bit more into endurance, remember the heal from your 2 scales with enemy level. Using his 2 in a level 100 enemy, which is already weaker than base steel path, will heal 517 health on this build. It's really not that much. He has 2,975 health. The heals scale linearly, so actually any enemy above levels 575 will result in you healing your entire health bar instantly upon using his 2. So if you're stuck in a pinch, that is an option. And there you go, they eat and yeet Gourmand Grendel. You can get a feel of what Grendel can eat like before the augment right now with the first build, and be fully prepared to finally taste some good fucking food with the second one once the augment drops. It's plenty of fun and hilarious, even if just a gimmicky build. If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like, or better yet subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to get you new information out always as soon as possible, like I've done with covering all this new war and new augment stuff. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds on a nearly daily basis. You don't want to miss out on any of that, do you? That'll be for this video. Thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.